put my foot on the floor and I'm not listening till I see God or a checkered flag.
Hello, welcome back to episode 8 of Racing Thoughts and IndyCar Podcast. I'm Megan Dennis.
And I'm Meg Taylor.
And we are here to cover 2 races in the land of corn that were both somehow very boring and very entertaining, all at the same time.
Great way to put it.
A lot to talk about. I guess kind of kick us off, we do have a few kind of like bits and bobs, news things, nothing of concrete. Rumor-wise, Valtteri Bottas, known Formula One driver, is rumored to potentially be going to IndyCar if he doesn't land a seat. If you keep up with F1, you know, that's constant silly season over there right now, really until like Carlos Sainz signs his. So who knows, Bottas could end up in a Williams seat. Bottas could end up in IndyCar. I haven't seen him linked with any teams, just that there are several teams interested in him, whatever that happens to mean.
I had no idea. That is, I mean, like, I feel like his vibe and aesthetic can work, but that is interesting.
I don't think I love it, just from the sense of like we have a lot of guys that I think are in line to have chances in IndyCar that I would rather see over Valtteri Bottas. Yeah, I guess that'll be something to watch just in general in the world of motorsports silly season. And then along with that, we do have pretty much confirmation from Bobby Rahal that Alexander Rossi will not be joining RLL next season. So we're not going to see just, you know, Christian and Alex just switching seats and that's all there is to it. It looks like RRL is wanting to keep Fittipaldi and also potentially bringing in Yuri Vips. I think we'll see Yuri at some point during this season as well because he's been at every race this year. It just hasn't been in a car, but they keep talking about it. His name keeps coming up. RRL really likes him.
Oh, why?
His controversy aside, apparently they're really happy with his driving style and he's been doing all their sim work for him. So that kind of seems, based off what Bobby was saying, the direction they're going in for next year.
Listen, if Red Bull dropped him because of his controversy, you know it's some messed up. So I don't want to see him in Indy, but I am not in charge of those decisions. So I guess we'll see.
That is one I guess we can definitely take off the list of like Rossi's not landing there. Where is he gonna go? I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of it rumor mills wise for this week of just a couple other silly season pieces. Do have a couple of concrete pieces of news which I think is interesting. So Meyer Shank Racing has signed a technical alliance with Chip Ganassi Racing for 2025 and beyond, which is really interesting because for at least this year, and I think it's been the last 2 years, that they've been in a technical alliance with Andretti. So MSR is breaking that one to go to Ganassi, which might tie into the charter system that's coming into play. I haven't done a lot of research on the charter system. I do have that like in mind things to look up into. But from what I've heard with the charter system, they're only going to be allowed 3 cars. So by having this partnership with Meyer Shank, it could give Ganassi the chance to run a 3rd car under that Meyer Shank name that they may not have been able to have if this charter system goes in place. Like, so that's still something I need to look into and kind of see what that's going to look like if that is happening. But it's definitely, regardless, it's an interesting technical alliance happening to go from Andretti to Ganassi and all that kind of behind the scenes stuff with that one.
Yeah, I would be really interested to learn more about the charter system because I'm going to be honest, I don't know anything about it. So anybody have any information? That would be greatly appreciated.
And then the only other bit of news, we'll really kind of kick off into our Iowa recap as well. Iowa has been confirmed for the schedule for 2025 and beyond, which is exciting, I think. As far as like a whole race weekend, it seems like definitely a really cool thing. Whether or not it'll be a double header, because it's only been a double header since 2020, and it's been one since then, but with TV deals going to Fox, whether or not they can provide that double time slot on TV will really kind of dictate whether or not it'll be an Iowa doubleheader next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot of TV coverage, so I don't see Fox being thrilled about that, but I would love to continue to have it be a doubleheader. I think it's a really interesting race weekend. I mean, you have the setup with like practices and qualifying and all of that. So I would love to see it continue be a doubleheader. I don't know if any of the drivers would agree because it is a very physically demanding race. That's going to be one to watch, though. So I guess we'll see.
Definitely when it comes to that. It's definitely one just like after this weekend. Kind of a boring race, but like I kind of want to go to Iowa now. And I don't think I've ever said that in my life.
I think it's all of the other stuff that happens during the weekend that makes it that exciting of a weekend. I do think it was much more exciting prior to the repave. And like, we're going to talk about this when we do the whole race recap. But like, yeah, it was boring this year. But I wonder with track evolution over time, that's obviously going to change things up. So, like, just because it was boring this year doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be that way forever. So, we could get to see some very interesting racing happening there. So, I don't know.
I guess we'll just jump right into it. So Iowa weekend, it was Lee Diffie's last time as of current, due to his NBC contract, and with the Olympics coming up, it'll be his last of his IndyCar calls as we know it. So I mean, legendary name associated with the sport. You always enjoy him on the call, so kind of sad.
I mean, he has such an iconic voice. It's going to be really weird to not have him around for it. So, very, very sad. But best of luck in your future endeavors. We'll miss you.
We'll hear you on the Olympics. Excited for
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Into the race. So 2 races, night race, day race. Before that, kind of touching on stuff we have already mentioned, but tire deg slash the lack of, what is that going to look like? Firestone did bring the new tires that I mentioned. They were hoping to bring a new compound. It didn't really work.
Yeah, they went so much longer on these tires than I have ever seen, ever. So, I mean, one, it was honestly quite impressive, but two, made for really weird strategy calls.
Well, it's like Hinch brought it up more than once of just it's always been a four-stop race.
Hmm.
And Scott McLaughlin made it 97 laps during the day before he had to change tires in lap 2. And it's insane. And like, that's a short track for a reason. So it's just like, you look up and suddenly half the race is gone and nobody's hit it. It's just disappointing, honestly, from a racing perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there were other factors that went into it being very boring, but like, considering the repave and considering the fact that there was no like high line to it, the only action we were really ever going to see was going to be happening during pits. And then that didn't happen because there weren't a lot of them. So it was just kind of like, all right, all the action that I had anticipated happening just like didn't come to fruition because of the fact that there was no deck.
Yeah. And I mean, you already touched on the other 2 points. Like, there was no high line. Yeah, you couldn't pass. And when we saw people try, that was the accidents that we saw. And I guess, thanks for nothing, NASCAR. You took what has historically been a really good IndyCar race, and your need to have the repave in these corners has ruined it, essentially.
Yeah, I didn't know that the repave was thanks to NASCAR, and I still don't quite understand why NASCAR wanted it, but like I don't really need to know why because they ruined it. So like thanks for nothing.
Well, and apparently it's really similar to what happened, which we're not going to Texas this year, but it's what happened to Texas 2 years ago, I think, where NASCAR got the repave and they didn't do this for Iowa, but they put some like weird like substance down on the track, made it way too slick. There was no running in the high lines, didn't matter how much high line session you wanted to do, that like it just became unpassable and you got a boring race. And it took, I think, 2 years before everything was able to really rubber back down enough to be able to get a half decent race last year. And then they took it off the calendar. And I mean, clearly we're not getting Iowa off the calendar, but like it's not going to be fun if it's going to take 2 or 3 more years for it to get back to good racing again.
Yeah, not a fan of that.
Did you watch Quali and the chaos of Quali?
I did. I did. First off, you know how I feel about oval qualies just from the 500. You know, it stresses me out. I don't love it, but I mean, that's just personal stressing. Yeah, it was really chaotic. I told you guys that the hybrid was going to bring a very interesting brand of chaos to each of these races because it is the first time that we're having it. And boy, did the hybrid chaos show out within quali specifically. There were some issues with like the software connecting, and some drivers had it and some drivers had issues with it, and then all of a sudden you have drivers who were able to go again and do another set of quali laps, and it was just weird. I don't know how to describe it.
I found it frustrating in the sense of just like no one seemed to know what was going on. And so I mean, poor Jack Harvey, and three quality runs because his hybrid wasn't deploying. But then, like, Joseph had issues, Rossi had issues. They didn't get to rerun. And it's like, no one really seemed to know, was it like, when was it a software issue of like, okay, it's not getting to the cars from Indy cars in versus like, was it just bad runs? And no one, I mean, technical director Kyle, I don't know Kyle's last name, but technical director Kyle just running up and down the pit lane in his gray shirt, very confused. And like, I mean, Colton got his first ever pole. Congratulations to Colton Herta. First ever oval pole, let me specify.
Yes.
But he almost reran, which luckily they were able to be like, no, like, never mind, we're not going to do it. But it was, what, 15 minutes of just waiting around? Everyone's.
Yeah, it was just like there was no protocol. Like the issues that were happening with the hybrid wasn't the issues within the hybrid system themselves in the car. It was like an electrical issue that was like happening on IndyCar software side. And so that was kind of like the reasoning for allowing the reruns was because it wasn't a mechanical issue inside the cars that the teams could kind of, work with. But I don't know. It just kind of highlights what happens when you have a new system and what happens when you have a new iteration of something of like, you don't really know the rules because you've never experienced this before. So, yeah, we didn't have rules because there are issues that didn't exist. And now that we know that those issues exist, we can make the rules and apply going into the future, like into future races. So, yeah, chaos. I would love to know why Jack Harvey and Colton Herta were given the go ahead for reruns, whereas Rossi and Joseph didn't, because they seem to have had the same issues, but two of them got to rerun, two of them didn't. So I don't understand what that difference was, and I would love to know, but again, I'm not paid to make those decisions. So I don't know, man.
And of course, like with Claw, we also have to mention Scott McLaughlin set a new track record. I don't have the number in front of me, but I know it was a 188 something. So he was like over a second faster.
That's crazy.
Yeah. just yeah.
Yeah, I don't have words for that. That was just nuts. He was so fast.
And to jump ahead, it paid off for him. All right. Into race one, night race, which was kind of cool, honestly, like having a night race. Some really cool shots of like sunset with the cars and everything. Like that was just enjoying racing standpoint of like, this is pretty.
Yeah.
But lap one, turn one.
We had to reset our counter.
Thank you, little brother.
Dude doesn't have anything to go off of. That was just pure driver error. Like he went over the line, lost it. Like there was no contact on him. So it's like you can't even shift blame. But that's okay. He's the only one I'll say that about. Anyone else has that issue. So I'm like, ugh, come on. But I'm like, no, it's Dave. It's fine. It's fine.
His wrist is still broken.
Exactly. He's still coming back. He's figuring it out.
But yeah, so it was David Malukas, Roman Grosjean, Augustine Canapino. Somebody else was out. I mean, whoever else he took out was like out of the race. But I don't know who it was.
Was Lundgaard involved in that?
He was in that, but he definitely went back out. Yeah, okay. 5 drivers were tired for contact in the race. So 4 of them at the beginning, it was Christian Lundgaard. So they sent him back out. They ended up retiring again later, which I hate for Christian because, I mean, he is the title sponsor car.
Yeah.
And for no fault of his own to just be out really sucks.
I don't know. I guess the silver lining of that is the fact that it was through no fault of his own,
Yep.
Like maybe that makes the title sponsors feel a little bit better.
And like I could tell you without a shadow of a doubt, like Iowa was sponsored by Hy-Vee. They did their marketing really well.
They really did.
So yeah, it was those 4 drivers involved in that. And then not long after that, we also had Jack Harvey retire from the race. And just, God, I feel so bad for him.
I'm honestly shocked that he even went out, but like, I get it. They had to, but still, he wasn't looking great.
Well, he had said last weekend, like after last weekend's race, that he was suffering from neck and back spasms. So, like, he knew going into this weekend, like, homeboy wasn't doing well. They called up Connor Daly. He got on Roger Penske's private plane and made it to Iowa. So, CD was there on standby. Jack went out on Friday. He did all the qualifying and everything. And then, from everything that I've read on it, it was one where technically he was cleared by IndyCar medical. And so, like, they couldn't say, no, you can't race. they said, we advise you not to race, but we, like, technically you are cleared to race. And so with that, Dale Coyne wanted to run the car. They tried to get Connor into that seat when after quali, like, it was very, you could see them, they were physically having to take Jack Harvey out of the car after quali.
Like, if you can't get yourself out of your own car, you can't be racing. Like, I feel like that should be pretty clear, but
Well, and I thought it had to be because, like, I know Formula One, and I just, I
Mhm.
guess, maybe assumed with IndyCar it's the same thing of like they have to be able to pass their jump test. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't think in good faith you could tell me that Jack Harvey passed the jump test. I mean,
no.
maybe he did, but I don't think I believe it. So that's, I have issues with. But then it's also a matter of, so it's rule 4.3.3.1. I pulled a U and I looked it up.
Look at you.
So I don't remember the technical jargon of it, but the TLDR really comes down to, even though like Connor Daly has experiences, you know, he finished fairly high in the 500, the man knows how to race, like on ovals, that's not an issue. In order to be able to race in a weekend, you have to have had running time in the car prior to the start of the race. And due to the concerts going on, they could not get a special session done until Sunday morning to be able to even have a chance of running Connor Daly, which rules are rules, but also like we've seen IndyCar waive rules. So I think that's my issue of like, again, you can't have it both ways. It can't be, oh, let's be pro driver safety, but also like, we're going to stick to this one rule that isn't helping a driver's safety right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when it comes to pure driver safety like that, historically, IndyCar tends to be pretty good with it. But this is one that I don't necessarily agree with for the exact same reasons. I'm like, you either care about driver safety or you don't. Pick one.
Jack Harvey raced. Jack Harvey was out after not a lot of laps. I
Yeah.
do want to touch on with that lap one incident.
Hmm.
136 laps down, they decided to send Romain Grosjean back out to the race. I still really don't get why. That man finished like 190 laps down.
I
Why?
didn't even know that he went back out.
It popped up on the screen. He was at that point, he was 136 laps down. And then at one point later, he was 185 laps down. I'm just like, why are you out here?
Oh dear God, that just seems very counterproductive. And to think we were laughing at who was it last week? Scott Dixon, who was out for like
Yeah,
20
60 something laps. Yeah.
yeah.
Other things I think interesting with the race, a lot of penalties given out under the yellows in the just moving under caution, getting ahead under caution, something of that nature
Mhm.
for Ferrucci. And then he got an extra penalty because he didn't serve his penalty correctly.
Oh no.
Oh no. Couldn't happen to better people. But it also happened to Linus Lundqvist. I don't even remember them talking about him during the race, but he got
Yeah.
one of those penalties. Catherine Legg got one, and then it turned out it wasn't even supposed to be assigned to her. So she served a penalty that wasn't her penalty. I haven't verified that. It was her that was saying it, so I don't know for sure. But if that is the case, that's kind of really frustrating. And I will say, I will give Santino Ferrucci this. I'm like, yes, it was technically they went by the rules, but his was very, very close on whether or not that should have been what they called shucks darn. But there was that. Alex Palou DNF.
Yeah, that was insane. Like, dude has only had 7 DNFs in his entire career. Like, you don't, I think Scott McLaughlin made the comment, like, this dude doesn't make mistakes. So, like, when you see it happen, it's just kind of like, what just happened?
And I hate it for Colton Herta, though, because I mean,
Yeah.
Colton went from leading the race to finishing, I think, P5, all because as he pitted, Palou spun out. And, like, I don't know if you saw the shot of Colton's coming out of pit lane, and in the
Mm,
background, all you see is Alex spitting, and it's just like, you know exactly what's about to happen. And, like,
yeah.
Colton goes a lap down because of it. And it's like, it's very poetic type shot, but it's also like, oh, poor Colton. Because, like, this was going to be his first oval win. And
Yeah.
with the way the race was going, he was
It
going to
should
hold on to have his first oval win.
Mhm. Oh, it hurts. I feel bad. He's just had a really he's had a string of really bad luck lately when it comes to like just that race win is within his grasp and then it just gets ripped away. I feel so bad. Colton, your time will come.
And I guess with that, speaking of first oval wins, congratulations, Scott McLaughlin, on your
Scotty,
first oval win. As you said, you can call yourself an IndyCar driver now.
you're officially an IndyCar driver, Scotty Mac. Look at that.
I will say it was really funny 'cause they had a hot mic, like, when he got out of the car, and all you hear him go is just, "Man, I can't even have a beer tonight."
I didn't get that. Oh my god.
Oh, that's something else we didn't touch on, but his, I guess, Josh Allen impersonation that he did when he got pole in qualifying, where I was just like, "Did he reboot? Did he have a stroke?" Like, and then,
Was
no,
funny.
apparently he was doing what Josh Allen did at some golf event. I'm not gonna pretend to know what golf event that it was, but it was a lot funnier when I thought Scotty Mac rebooted live on TV and not was memeing himself, but regardless, it was funny.
It was very funny. I missed it, and then you told me about it, and I, like, went back to watch and was like, "Oh my god." I guess when you go that fast, sometimes your body does need a system reboot. Yeah, so Scotty Mac won his first oval race. Love it. And then we had Pato P2 and Joseph P3, which was honestly surprising because Joseph has not had a good like, he did not have a good weekend.
He started P22 for
Yeah.
this first race.
Yeah, which was shocking. And I mean, like, no surprise that he climbed his way back up to P3, but like, very shocking weekend for him. Just overall, like, king of corn and had an incredibly unremarkable weekend. So,
Especially, yeah, by his standards. He's the king
yeah.
of corn for a reason. And
Mhm.
to, I guess, jump ahead to race two, I mean, he's the only Penske driver to not be on the top step. And it's the
He,
one you figured would be the
he would,
most.
yeah. Out of everybody, you would have expected him.
Yeah, I think this again says that my podium predictions are not working out well. Because I did say Joseph Newgarden. I said Christian Lundgaard was going to be one to watch. Wrong on that. Sorry, Christian. I don't remember who else was on my podium. I did say Colton. I
See,
don't
and then
remember who the
there's
third
my
one.
side, and I'm like, "No, please continue to say these names for your podium predictions. That way, my podium predictions can become more true."
All right. So before jumping into race two, which
Yeah.
interesting fact, we'll go with that. That's probably a better term. It's an interesting fact. So 2023, last year's race, had a little over 1,500 passes.
Wow.
In comparison, 2024 Iowa Saturday night had 192.
What?
Yeah, like that just, we've already talked on it, but it really just shows how much they ruined a good race.
Wow.
Like that's 12% of the passing that we saw from last year to this year was made, like in total. And that's just,
That's crazy.
track wasn't swept, you couldn't get around. And it
Yeah.
just shows. And it's just,
Yeah, I mean, Pato called it a snooze fest,
and
so
he's right.
he
Like,
absolutely is. I compared it to the F1 race in Monaco where it's like, if you don't get good starting position, that's it, because you don't get to pass. That's what this felt like. Jeez, those numbers are actually insane.
and I don't have the numbers in comparison for race two, but just that alone, like I said, it's 12% of the number of passes in
Yeah.
2023. Like that's ridiculous, and really just goes back to taking a good race and making it boring very easily.
Alright, so
And
race 2.
yeah, race two also still boring because you couldn't
Also
pass.
a snooze fest.
We did have Connor Daly on track, so he did get his special 15-minute session
Yep,
Sunday morning, and then very sadly was out
retire.
about as quickly because his car, I guess, took on the same approach as Jack Harvey and said, "No, we can't do this." So,
Yeah, that was a shame. Either I didn't see it or they didn't mention it on the broadcast that he was out, because then like halfway through the race, I had texted you being like, Connor Daly's out. It's like, I didn't know that.
I don't remember if it was after the race if I saw it online, but they talked to him like after the race, and he was just like,
Mm.
"It's probably the like only time in history you've bothered to come find the guy who's finished dead last and talk to him at this race."
Oh, Connor Daly.
Certainly is a character.
He truly is. Gotta love him though.
Connor, we do love you. If you ever want to come on the podcast, let us know. We can collab with your podcast.
Yeah, we could do all the collaboration. We would love to.
Open invitation anytime.
So, other than that, I think really the biggest piece of news that happened with race two was that last lap crash that happened with Rossi, Stingray Robb, Ed Carpenter, Kyle Kirkwood. That was terrifying to watch. Like,
Yeah.
like my stomach, like my heart dropped into my stomach, and like couldn't tell you what had happened in the moment, but what I guess has transpired is McLaren underfueled Rossi's car to get a really quick pit stop, which was great in the moment. I was super excited. He had a 5.5-second pit stop, but they underfueled him. And so he was running out of fuel at the end of the race on that last lap. So he was kind of going into fuel save and going significantly slower than he probably should have. And Stingray had crashed into the back of him, which caused a whole chain reaction of things that involved Ed Carpenter and Kyle Kirkwood. So Rossi had spun out, Stingray Rob was flipped upside down, Ed Carpenter's car was on top of Kyle Kirkwood's, and Kyle was trapped in his car, and Stingray Rob was stuck upside down in his car, and they were trying to get him. It was a whole lot of moving parts, which were all incredibly dangerous. So we've said it once before. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to say it every single time. Shout out to the AMR safety team. Like, we love you. Thank you so much for everything that you do. You guys are 100% responsible for getting these drivers out of their cars and out of very dangerous situations and getting them to be safe. Like, I think Hinch might have said it, like, it is so hot in those cars when you are not moving and like you are getting very claustrophobic. And then, if you're Kyle Kirkwood, you have Ed Carpenter's wheel literally on top of you. Like, you could see him on his onboard. Like, he's trying to like look up and he couldn't even do that. Like, he's trying to get out. They can't get him out, but everyone is worried about getting Stingray's car flipped back over, that Kyle was kind of stuck. And it was just a lot of moving parts. Everyone is fine. Everyone has been seen and cleared, but it was very tense for the last however long it was on the broadcast of like, oh my God, we had a winner, like we had our podium, but no one was like really celebrating it because of how horrendous that crash was. So a little bit bittersweet ending, but oof, McLaren, you're making it really tough for me to defend you right now.
And I mean, on this, it's no defending. There's no excuse. Shout out to the safety that's been done in IndyCar too, because we've only had the aero screen since 2020. And like,
Mhm.
if they didn't have that aero screen, who knows what would have happened to Cal Kirkwood?
Yeah.
Because there was a tire literally inches from his head.
No, like, what would have happened to Stingray without it? That would have been like, there would have been several like severe injuries and like potential fatalities on that. And I will say, because I pulled it up with what Kyle said on Twitter. So initially, Kyle, during his like after like post race interview, was saying like, oh, both drivers could have absolutely done something better to avoid all of this. And then on Twitter, Kyle goes, after sleeping on this, I initially thought and said both drivers could have done a better job here. I take that back. For Alex to predict or where and when or even if his car will run out of fuel is absolutely impossible. You're always going to use the line that's most efficient. So, one, shout out Kyle for kind of reflecting on it and then not just letting it go, but also like acknowledging that, like, no, I wasn't right in this situation. Like, I take it back. This is kind of the mentality now. I think that just goes to show how good of a person he is. Racing aside, that just shows how good of a guy Kyle Kirkwood is. So you're a good egg, Kyle Kirkwood. We love you not just because you're a good racer, you're a good person.
And again, reiterate, like all drivers are okay. And we knew 3 out of the 4 were, but like seeing Stingray get taken off on a backboard, like, and not knowing what really was, I mean, yes, he gave a thumbs up, but it's like you didn't know the condition for 5, 6 hours. It's scary.
And like, we just got the clear from IndyCar themselves that he was seen, he was discharged. Like, they brought him to a hospital for additional screening. I think as someone who has grown up playing a lot of sports and has unfortunately been carted off on a stretcher on multiple occasions, one of the things that they do, at least in my experience, ask you to do is like give that thumbs up to make sure you do have like a range of motion. And so, like, seeing that, I was like, okay, there is range of motion there. It's not like he's paralyzed or it's not like there's a threat of it, because if there was even just a semblance of an idea, they would have never asked him to do that, or they never would have allowed him to. So that was reassuring. However, that's only one thing that could have happened. A big piece of information that has happened within Formula One this week has been like Max Verstappen's like post concussion, post 2021 Silverstone race, like medical repercussions that he's still feeling, which is, blurry vision and all of these other, again, long term post concussion symptoms. And again, as someone who has had many of those, and I feel the long term effects of them as well, I know how bad it can be, but that's only from like someone who's played lacrosse. Like, I'm not racing at these speeds. So it's like those speeds with how bad concussions can get is very worrisome. And I'm still going to be very worried about how bad these things can get. So, yes, he may be cleared, but I'm still very nervous about it. And it's going to be something I'm personally going to watch over time.
Well, and I sent you right, before we started recording that 109 Gs on impact.
Think about how bad some other crashes in motorsport are. You would think that concussion is like a little bit higher on their scale of things to worry about, but it's just not.
It frustrates me. I guess as someone who is in that sport adjacent world as a career path, like it's just, I don't like it. I don't like the fact that inevitably it is going to have long-term effects that isn't seemingly being treated in any sort of form now, because it's like, okay, 109 Gs. Yes, you've been cleared, but you're going to get in that same car this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, who was that driver who crashed last year and suffered concussion symptoms and is now out? There was a driver last year who had that very similar crash.
Simon Pagino has a TBI and is still recovering from it.
Yeah, very similar crash to Stingrays. Look at those effects. He's out of commission, and he put out a statement recently because it's just been over a year, and he's like, "This is my new normal. Like, I will never return to what I was." I don't know if I agree with clearing Stingray to race. Like, don't get me wrong, we love him. We support him, but it's just like, because of that, because we love him, because we support him, I want him to sit it out so that way he has time to recover, because it's only going to be a few days. Whereas like normal concussion protocol is like what, 2 weeks? At a minimum. Like, I don't know.
As we say, they don't pay us enough to make these decisions. However, IndyCar, if you want to pay someone to do research on it, we can talk.
So yeah, to leave the heavy topic behind, our podium, we had Will Power win it. It was his first win at that oval specifically, and his second win of the season. Love to see it. Then we had Alex Palou and Scott McLaughlin in P3. So pretty good podium, pretty good race from the three of them. I think Scott McLaughlin ran a hilarious second race where he was just kind of like on his own. Like, he just was chilling. Like, everyone was talking about Will and Alex, and then just like Scotty Mac pulled up in P3 and was like, "Hi, I'm here too."
I do think my favorite thing on the podium, though, well, I guess technically before the podium, but you just see Liz Power run up, and then Bo was over it.
He was so done.
You could just tell how hot it was, and the drivers looked miserable, but this little 4-year-old boy was just there that you won. I'm over this.
It was hilarious too, because Will was even trying to give him his water bottle that he was drinking out and was like, "Here, have it." And he was like, this boy was sipping on the water and then immediate was like, "No, I don't want it."
It's just watching Will go from "Oh, I just want to race" to "Oh, wait, I gotta be dad." It was really funny.
But I don't know. I love seeing Will in his dad mode. I think it's so funny. He just is dad.
I enjoy Will Power. I really do. But yeah, that was really, other than the crash.
Yeah.
It was boring. Nothing really happened.
Snooze fest.
I guess few other things touch on with that. Scott Dixon has completed the most laps in IndyCar history as of this weekend. It's not shocking when you've been in the series since 2002. It's kind of inevitable when you're Scott Dixon, but it still can't be overlooked because it's impressive.
And, you have that many laps, but it's also the amount of success that he's had. had within that time frame is just so impressive too. So it's like, we love to see it. Can't wait to continue watching him race more laps.
We touched on Joseph not winning, so I don't think there's really a point in spending too much time on that. The only other real thing I thought was interesting was after the race, and I don't know if you watched the video when it was about like a 6-minute video interview with Ed Carpenter, which Ed Carpenter is a team owner on top of the fact that he also does the oval races for the team. That man is so anti these hybrid units. Like it's astounding. And just now maybe part of that was like Ed's first time racing with the hybrid. He wrecked his car twice this weekend. Maybe that was a factor of like the man was upset with how this weekend went, but like he doesn't think the hybrid's a good addition right now. And that to paraphrase quote what he was saying, the notion of the only reason IndyCar has a hybrid is to say that they have a hybrid with it in its current form, and that like it's added 104 pounds to the car for not enough getting out of it to make it worth it. And he's like, now I've botched 2 of them this weekend, so like all we're doing is throwing money away.
Well, maybe don't botch your car. Like, what do you want me to say to that? Like, I get it. It is a heavy install, like I touched on it in the bonus episode. Like they did struggle with it, which is why it took so many years to get there. But dude, this is where they're at. Like you either adapt or you fail. Sorry to say, but you didn't adapt, and you kind of got to, because this isn't going away. Like Indy is set on this. This is the path forward with this series, and this is the path forward with any racing series right now. Like Formula One already has this. You have an entire racing series based off of renewable energy. Like Formula E, there's already this in place. You look at the trends in road cars. Like this is the way. And like, again, Ed Carpenter, if you want to be successful, maybe don't crash your car twice. Yeah, I mean, this is all part of the growing pains of a whole new system, though. Like, it's not going to be perfect. And, it takes a little bit of time to figure out. And like everything, there's going to be iterations of it, and you have to start somewhere. Your first iteration of a new system is not going to be perfect. And I think so many people, like drivers, owners, and like people involved in these teams were expecting it to be. I'm like, that's not realistic. So I don't know.
And then my last thing that I have on the race, just because it made me laugh. We all know that I call Kyle Mr. Consistency. Unfortunately, he did not finish in the top 10. However, my favorite part of his interview, and yes, he's upset, and yes, he just goes, found out we finished P16, so like, it's not bad. So I love you.
He's a good egg. Like, I really wonder what it would take for him to be like horribly negative, because he just doesn't seem to be the type. Like, he just seems like one of those people that like, oh yeah, things happen, and he's just kind of like water off a duck. So I think that wraps up race 2, huh?
Yeah. And then I guess short preview of Toronto. I don't have a lot, and I know we're kind of going long with time because it is a long week. We are not going to have a dumb question segment for that reason. We did get one in from a listener, though, that we will get back to touching on probably next week. But for the sake of time, we are not going to delve down that path today. Street circuit, our last street circuit of the year coming up this weekend. We are down to 6 races left, which is crazy. It's gone fast.
Way too fast.
85 laps, 1.786 mile circuit. I guess I should have put it in kilometers because we are going to Canada, but I don't respect them like that. 151.81 total miles and features 11 turns. Alex Rossi said in Off Track last week that he thinks because it doesn't have a repave like both Iowa and Road America has had, this is really when we're going to see the first true test of the hybrid system. And what can it look like? What does it look like? How are they able to really use it? Especially in regards to the extra weight, because I haven't seen anything since coming out of Iowa really, but like after Road America, that's what they kept saying beforehand, like, oh, all this is going to be a really, really physical race. And then it's like a lot of the drivers were like, it really wasn't that bad. So Rossi seems to be on the side of he thinks that Toronto actually is going to be a lot more of a more physical race because of the lack of repave. So I think that'll be interesting to watch.
I think it'll also be interesting with tires too, because the last 2 races haven't really been a tire race, but then you go to, a street circuit with the additional weight, with no no repave. Like it just seems like it's a trifecta of like, oh, this is really going to put everything to the test. I agree with Rossi, but I think highlighting the tire strategy is going to be really, really important.
We'll say Toronto is having massive flooding
Oh,
as of today.
oh no.
Hopefully that's all cleared out before this upcoming weekend. But like, I mean, if they had to race today, they're racing boats.
I
So
would love to see them race boats.
we'll continue to have inconsistent across the grid lineups because Hunter McElroy, I mentioned him last week, is doing testing. He has been confirmed that he is racing in the 18. So no Jack Harvey. Jack Harvey, I hope you're back better as soon as possible for your own sake. I do think it was rumored that Jack wasn't going to race at all this weekend already, but coming off injury, I hope he's back to 100. Congratulations to Hunter. I'm excited to watch you. And then Toby Sowie, who we saw at Road America, it's not confirmed, but it is all but that he will be driving the 51 this weekend.
Yeah, it's looking likely, but I don't know. I love, like, obviously super sad for Jack. We want you to get better, heal. But I always love seeing when, like, the Indy Next drivers get an opportunity to come up. Like, it's always like watching the F2 drivers get a shot at racing in F1. It's just kind of like, yeah, this is what you've been working towards, and we want you to succeed. So we're really looking forward to having Hunter in on the 18 and continuing to see Toby in the 51.
And then schedule wise, we don't have Indy next, so I don't have to worry about messing it up this week.
Hey, look at that. Just for you.
Friday, practice 1, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Saturday, practice 2 is at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Qualifying, 2:45 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Then warm up, 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. And then the race, which unfortunately I will not get to be watching because I will be moving, is at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday.
So who do you have for your Toronto podium?
Who am I cursing this week? Well, Christian Lundgaard won. I don't want to say it though, because I want him to have a good race. But Christian Lundgaard won last year.
Yes.
He, from what I've heard, like feels they're going to be in a really good place. I expect Christian to do well. I want to see Christian do well.
He doesn't have a mustache to shave off this year though. So like, is it gonna work out? I don't know. All right. So you got
Rossi. I want to see Rossi have a good street race. He hadn't been good on streets this year. The car's not good, but he can surprise me. And I guess Scott McLaughlin, Scott's been good really all season, barring, a little bit of cheating issues at the beginning. But like, even that included, he did well technically in the race.
Yeah, just that whole minor cheating scandal.
So I like those three. I don't know what combination. I don't know what it's actually going to turn into happening to them, but I feel good on that. And David Malukas can have a good makeup race.
Yeah. All right. I like those picks.
What's your podium?
I'm going to shock everybody with my podium. And I'm going to go with a real surprise. I'm going to go Pato, Rossi, and Kyle. Again, to everyone's surprise. I know everyone's jaw is on the floor.
I want your podium. Like, genuinely, I want your podium to happen.
I need it. I need it so bad. I'm just going to keep saying it till it's true. I don't care how long it takes. So I'll say that that's my podium, but I will say, additionally, I think Colton is really good on street tracks. And like we've mentioned, he's had a real string of bad luck recently with, like the win is just within his grasp and then it gets yanked out of his hands by something that's not his fault. So I would love to see something go right for him. So I think Colton will be one to watch. I think, you can never discredit Pillow. He's always going to be up there. And Will Power has been one to watch. I mean, like he always is. He's freaking Will Power.
And it's close enough to Detroit that I bet Flava Flav will be there.
Oh my God, I want to see Flava Flav and Will Power so bad. So yes, I think Will Power is also going to be one to watch. But my podium's always going to be Pato, Rossi, and Kyle. And again, I'll say it till it's true.
Support that. We have had some shakeups in the standings in the top 10 for this week. I guess 2 races will do that, but P10, Santino Ferrucci. Joseph Newgarden is in 9th. Rossi is down to 8th. Kyle in 7th. Colton in 6th. Scott McLaughlin is in 5th. So Scott went from, I believe, 9th last week to all the way up to 5th with his 2 podiums for the weekend. Scott Dixon is in 4th. Pato is in 3rd. He and Will are less than 20 points from each other right now. So that kind of second spot's really tight. And then Alex Pillow, unshockingly, has remained at the top of the standings with about a 40-ish, 35-ish point lead right now. So like really
35
truly
Yeah, 35 points between Alex and Will, and then 17 points between Will and Pato. So, I mean, look at Scott going from what you said, what, ninth to fifth? Like, a win will shake things up significantly. And considering Pillow had a DNF, like, it is a lot closer than, I think a lot of people recognize. Like, it's Pillow, he's at the top, he's so dominant, like, on a consistent basis. But given the point system, a win from one of like Will Power, Pato, Dixon, or Scott is going to shake things up significantly. So I can't wait to see what happens.
no offense to Alex Palou, but him DNFing, I really think has done a service to the championship fight ranking.
Yeah, it's going to make it really interesting. Going to make it exciting racing. Alex, I am sad you DNF'd for yourself.
I was gonna say I'm not.
But I love it. So thank you for your service. All right, so I guess that wraps us up for the week.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok, Racing Thoughts Podcast on both. Share the show, like it, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you do that, we'll read it out. We'll shout you out big time. I don't think anybody has, but like we gladly will.
We'll see you next week then.
Hey y'all.
Bye.